वेलकम टू इंडिक टॉक्स। इंडिक टॉक्स में आप सभी का स्वागत है। आई एम दीपिका, योर होस्ट फॉर टुडेज टॉक, which is about a very pressing and critical issue, that is the ongoing violence in Manipur. The violence that has turned Manipur, the jeweled land, or as it is called in its anthem, the land of gold, into a burning saga. For the benefit of our audience, I think it would be appropriate if we start by covering what is happening right now in Manipur. What is the true picture? What were the chronological events that took place in the region? And then subsequently, we will cover the other dimensions of the issue. So, Ankita ji, I would request you to brief the audience about what is happening. How did the violence begin? And what is it about? Over to you. Thank you.
Yes, the violence that has been going on in Manipur for some days now between the Imphal Valley residents, that is the Hindu Meitei community, and the hill-based Hookies, who are predominantly Christian. This has been making headlines almost everywhere, with the government of Manipur imposing shoot-at-sight orders to the deployment of the Indian Army and Assam Rifles in the violence-hit areas. The recent violence that we will be talking about today, it began from the border district of Churachandpur on the 27th of April, when a violent mob led by the Christian body, the ITLF, that is the Indigenous Tribal Leaders Forum, burned down a newly constructed gym cum sports facility just a day before it was scheduled to be inaugurated by Chief Minister N. Biren. Now, these groups were already protesting against the proposed survey of reserved and protected forests and wetlands by the state government and the demolition of 3 unauthorized churches. Although the situation was handled by the security forces on time, but then things went out of hand on the 3rd of May, when the All Tribal Students Union of Manipur, it had organized a tribal solidarity march in the Torbung area of Churachandpur district with the aim of opposing the demand for the inclusion of the Meitei community in the scheduled tribe category. The protesters suddenly they started burning tires and other objects on the roads, whatever they could find, which subsequently led to massive violence on the streets. Similar other such violent protests in support of this tribal solidarity march took place in several other places of Manipur at the same time, especially in the Christian-dominated areas of Churachandpur, Kangpokpi, and Teknopal districts, as well as in Imphal West, Jiribam, Thobal, Kakching, and Vishnupur districts. Now, let us be very clear about this. The ongoing tension in Manipur is primarily between the Hindu Meitei community and the Christian Hookies. So it is again a Hindu-Christian conflict. Let's be very clear about it. A Hindu-Christian conflict that the rest of Bharat is witnessing again now at its pivotal conflict. It is again a battle of civilizational existence that the Hindus of the Northeast are fighting for. We certainly cannot deny the fact of the existence of certain inter and intra-tribal hostilities. That's true. But then at the same time, we also cannot overlook the religious dimension of the problem of insurgency in the Northeast that has been raging this region for many years now. And the same holds true for Manipur as well. Now, we need to remember here that through this ongoing conflict in Manipur, the religious fault line between the Hindus and the Christians, it has reopened again, especially after a directive of the High Court on the 27th of March to the state government of Manipur for the inclusion of the Meiteis in the scheduled tribes category. So this is what agitated the Christian organization recognized as the scheduled tribes in the Northeast? And can the Christians here be termed as a minority community? Really, are they minorities? I mean, in other words, I mean to say, who are the real minorities in the Northeast? So we need to take into account, the government needs to take into account all these multifaceted aspects in this region before implementing any policy concerning any community. Because we must not forget that every community in the Northeast is riddled with insecurities about the other for various reasons. And this trend becomes more visible when the conflict is directly between the Hindus versus the Christians. I think that's all I have to say in the with respect to what is going on there.
So the entire issue right now is the Christian tribes or the communities protesting against the scheduled tribe status of the Hindu Meitei community. What is it that they find problematic about it? Why are they protesting against it? What does it take away from their share of rights, privileges, or advantages that come along with the status of a scheduled tribe?
I think before we move on to the conflict, let us first begin by understanding the population composition of Manipur in brief before answering that question. Now, the three most important ethnic groups inhabiting present-day Manipur include the valley residents, that is the Meitei community, and there are both Meitei Hindus and Meitei Muslims. Then the residents of the hill areas, who are predominantly the Christian communities, the Nagas and the Kukis. So they have different divisions, different communities within them. Kabui Nagas, Tangkul Nagas, Koirao Nagas, even among the Kukis as well. Thado, Paiphe, Gamte, Sinte, Zo, etc. The northern hills of Manipur, they are predominantly they are populated by the Tangkul Nagas, and the southern hills are the main bastion of the Chins, Kukis, Zomis, and the Mizos. Now we see that the population in the hills of Manipur is largely Christian, unlike that of the valley. So almost all groups of the Nagas, the Kukis, in Manipur are Christians. But Christianity is an increasingly popular religion in today's Manipur, and it can be understood from the fact that it is the second fastest growing religion in the state today, accounting for about 45% of the total population. And with regard to the Meiteis, I would like to mention a point here. Besides the Jaintia community of Meghalaya and the Noktes and the Apatanis of the Zero Valley of Arunachal Pradesh, the Meiteis of Manipur, who are largely Vaishnavite, they have been among those who have staunchly resisted the proselytization agenda of the church. And besides Assam and Tripura, Manipur at present is the only other state in the Northeast where Hindu Dharma is still in existence. But Christianity has been making inroads among a significant section of the Meiteis here since the early 2000s, mainly as a result of the proselytization as a result of the proselytizing zeal of the Naga and the Kuki pastors from the hills. Now, this is something which is not to be ignored. While we are trying to analyze and understand the linkages between the decline of Hindu Dharma in the Northeast, which eventually paved the way for an Abrahamic thought process to take root among the people here, and the subsequent rise of secessionist tendencies. Right now, coming to your specific question, what problems do the Christian communities have in including the Meiteis in the list of the scheduled tribes? For this, we need to go into the hill valley divide in Manipur. We really need to talk about that issue and uncontrolled immigration to Manipur, especially to the Imphal Valley. So, in search of cultivable land and easy money, there has been an unabated migration of people from across the border with Myanmar and Bangladesh. So, this has compounded the problem further in the recent times. Deforestation, smuggling of drugs and narcotic substances, illegal poppy cultivation are some of the problems associated with the Kuki Chin immigrants from Myanmar. Now, the hill areas of Manipur, which are inhabited by the Christian Nagas and the Kukis, On the other hand, they are protected as tribal lands via certain laws which strictly prohibit outsiders, including the mighty Hindus of the Imphal Valley, from settling there. So, if included in the ST list, the Meiteis will be able to purchase land in the hill areas of Manipur, which are inhabited by the Christian groups. In the present situation, under the current circumstances, the Meiteis cannot buy land in almost 90% of the state's territory. But the reverse is possible. That means the Christians can come and settle in the valley at any time, and they can also buy land. So, the difference is starkly clear. There is a huge gap between the rights and freedoms of the Hindus in their own land versus those of the Christians. So, in that sense, are the Hindus of Manipur protected? No, they are not really. Is their population increasing? It doesn't seem so. Because from the demographic perspective, the population of Hindus is declining almost every decade in Manipur. As I've already mentioned, how Christianity is gradually making inroads among the mighty Hindus as well of late. So basically, the Hindus at present comprise 49% of the total population of Manipur, but they reside in a very, very small area of the state, 10% of the land area of the state. The Pangals, or the Manipuri Muslims, they are known as Pangals in the Manipuri language. They comprise around 10% of the state's total population, but the population of the Muslims is gradually on the rise in Manipur, mainly because of infiltration of Bangladeshi immigrants from neighboring Assam. Now, coming to the Christian majority hills of Manipur and the main problem, that is the hill valley religious divide. The hills comprise more than 85% of the total area of the state, but here only 42 to 43% of the state's population resides. So this is the starkly visible religious demographic imbalance of Manipur, and the problem that they have with the inclusion of the Meiteis in the scheduled tribes category is that they will be able to buy land in the hill areas as well, which is currently not possible under the current laws.
Okay, so this clears the picture that while these protesting tribes, which have waged the violence, claim to be indigenous, there's a majority, there's a large number which is migrating from the nearby regions to the Manipur state and the hill regions of Manipur.
Yes.
Plus, there's the conversion to Christianity, which increases the demographic strength of these people. So when it comes to the actual power play, it is this community that actually has power, which actually has privileges, which actually enjoys certain rights, which the Hindu Meitei community does not. What are the factors that have played a role in, basically empowering, basically encouraging this Christian dominant community to such an extent? Are there any cross-border elements involved? China, Myanmar, is there any outside hand in this conversion, immigration, and other things, which is basically working to the detriment of the indigenous Meitei Hindu community or the Hindus of the region?
Yes, actually, the root of the problem here lies in the period before 1947. So prior to the partition of Bharat in 1947, the King of Manipur had promulgated two laws for ensuring the smooth administration of the Imphal Valley on the one hand and the Hill District on the other. One law was the Manipur State Constitution Act for governance of the people of the valley, and the other was the Manipur State Hill Administration Regulation for the hill residents. So this is where and how the difference in the administration of both these areas began, and it continued to remain even after Manipur joined the Union of India in the year 1972. Now, if we recall here, when Manipur was a union territory, prior to this, the government body of the hill areas was known as the Standing Committee. But with the promulgation of these two laws, which I just mentioned, those people living in the plains could no more buy land in the hill areas. After Manipur gained statehood, the Standing Committee of the Hills was renamed as the HAC, that is the Hill Areas Committee, and it was entrusted with the responsibility of safeguarding the interests of the hill residents of the state. And the root of the problem lies in the fact that the current administrative system provides administrative autonomy to the elected Hill Areas Committee. So the hill residents of Manipur have their own share of freedom everywhere in the state with respect to land and resources. Coming to your specific question, the the outside hand, the role of outside forces in this entire conflict. I think whenever we are talking about the Northeast, because it is a border region, it is a sensitive border region of the country, we definitely cannot ignore the role of outside forces, especially China and Pakistan, when we are trying to study any conflict, even the current conflict that is going on at present in Manipur, because the proxy role of China has come up several times in the past as well, right from providing training to the insurgent groups of the Northeast and how PLA cadres they have been operating from Mandalay in Myanmar and Ruili in China, which is situated at the borders of Myanmar. And the role of China has been both overt and covert in supporting the insurgent groups of Northeast India. And this is a factor which can no longer be downplayed. Right from the supply of money to weapons, China's role as a proxy, I would say, in supporting the armed insurgent groups of the Northeast has often come up several times in the past during high-profile investigations into cases of weapons and arms seizures. And facilitated by the Chinese military, these insurgent organizations have been using the routes from Myanmar and Bangladesh to smuggle banned drugs and narcotic substances so as to earn easy money for their survival. And in this context, the interlinkages between and among the different insurgent outfits based in Manipur and Nagaland is also not to be overlooked in this context. And with regard to Myanmar, several insurgent groups, specifically the PREPAC, which is the People's Revolutionary Party of Kangleipak, a Manipur-based insurgent outfit based in the Manipur Valley, it was earlier reported to have received weapons and arms training along with the ULFA of Assam, that is the United Liberation Front of Assam, in exchange for hard cash from the KIA of Myanmar, the Kachin Independent Army. And it also has deep linkages with the separatist organization that is of Nagaland, the NSCN-IM, National Socialist Council of Nagaland, and besides the MNPF, Manipur Naga People's Front. And regarding the more about the Myanmar factor, yes, insurgency or any conflict among different ethnicities and people of different religious denominations in the Northeast, we cannot ignore the role of Myanmar in this context, especially after the military coup that took place in February 2021, needs to be understood in this backdrop, namely with respect to the current situation in Manipur. So as we know, some of us might be knowing, like the military junta in Myanmar, it has been battling a coalition of rebels of the CAN, the Chin National Army and civilian resistance fighters who form the Chin Land Defense Force, CDF. And since Manipur is situated along the border with Myanmar, it is believed that the prevailing situation in Myanmar might have forced the insurgent groups of this region, like the PLA, MNPF, and many others, to shift bases and operate from mobile bases close to border states like Manipur and Mizoram. And there have been reports of the existence of cross-border training camps for the insurgents who take refuge in Myanmar after carrying out their terror activities in the Northeast. And so these have become some sore points in the bilateral political relationship of India with Myanmar. There are also several vulnerable portions of the India-Myanmar border in Manipur that have been facilitating the entry of insurgents and infiltrators and other anti-national elements into the state time and again. So from the perspective of national security, it has now become very, very important to complete the process of fencing along this strategically located international border region of Manipur.
What role and how much of it does Myanmar play in the refugee problem? Is this a very big issue? And what can be the motivation? Basically, why is this immigration happening? What is the motivation? Is this to change the demography, on the religious aspect, the population aspect? What is the motivation, and what sort of role does Myanmar play in it?
Yes, very pertinent question, because this refugee problem from Myanmar in the northeast, this has become a humongous problem about which many people in the rest of the country are still not aware. And thousands of refugees from Myanmar, mostly belonging to the Kachin community, also known as the Zo community or the Zo tribes, they have fled Myanmar, and they have been taking shelter in the various border districts of Mizoram, Nagaland, and Manipur after the military coup of 2021 in Myanmar and the subsequent crackdown on anti-coup protesters and repeated armed conflicts between the soldiers of the military junta and local armed resistance groups. In fact, the Indian Home Ministry had earlier sent out an advisory to these four northeastern states of Manipur, Mizoram, Arunachal Pradesh, and Nagaland, which share around 1,500 kilometers of unfenced border with the Kachin and the Chin states of Myanmar, to not grant refugee status to any foreign national residing within their territory. But the problem here is that since these people who have been migrating, the Kachin immigrants or the Zo people and the Mizos, they are believed to share the same ancestry, ethnicity, and culture. And the larger agenda of some separatist Christian groups here is to carve out a separate Zo nation along the border regions of Mizoram, Nagaland, and Manipur. In fact, in Mizoram, where the role of the church in almost every aspect of society and politics is overwhelming, the government in Mizoram has been consistent in its stand that the Myanmarese refugees from the Chin state of Myanmar and the Mizos belong to the same ethnicity called Zo, but they were separated by political boundaries that were drawn by the British colonial regime, and hence they must be accommodated in the Mizo society. So we can understand this in the larger context of why secessionist tendencies still continue to prevail along the border areas of these states. And because of this, vital connectivity projects, including the India-Myanmar Thailand bilateral highway, have been derailed already in the northeast. So it is very, very important that the government of India takes these issues into account so that its foreign policy initiatives in the northeast to deepen ties with the ASEAN countries by isolating China are not jeopardized at any cost.
So, with immigration, refugees from these regions migrating to the Manipur state, there must have been a history of such violent, conflicts between the Hindus and these Christian immigrants, or these Christian groups wanting to establish their dominance. So can we throw some light on the volatile past of Churachandpur or other Christian dominant regions in the state?
Yes, so it's a good question, because Churachandpur, I would say, has been the hotbed of militancy in Manipur. So even the ongoing protests, the violence that has been going on at present in Manipur, it all began from the Torbuk area of the same district, that is Churachandpur. So we must understand that the real issues behind such conflicts in the northeast are not just limited to its place of occurrence, but they have several international links. They have multiple dimensions which need to be understood holistically in order to have a good perspective of problems faced in this region of the country. So in a way, we need to connect several dots together so as to understand the broader picture behind what's actually going on. So whether it has been really about ethnic or tribal conflicts or something deeper and more complex than this, because the anti-India, pro-subnational ideological and political orientations of the different insurgent organizations of Northeast India have given them access to a larger South Asia network of terrorist organizations and their anti-India subversive activities, including Pakistan's ISI and the LTTE of Sri Lanka. And this crucial aspect cannot be ignored while we try to delve into the problem of drugs and arms smuggling to India from across the border with Myanmar. Now, coming to your specific question, for those who might already be familiar with the geopolitical scenario of Manipur and especially its border regions. By border regions, here I mean the border villages. It is common knowledge that Churachandpur, which is the largest district in the state, has always been the main center of intense militancy. I would say the epicenter of all terrorism, all terror activities in Manipur, from rape and molestation to the killing of Indian Army officers, bombing of military convoys in the past. All of these have started from Churachandpur. And each of Manipur's 9 districts, all of the 9 districts of the state has been affected in some way or the other by never-ending militant violence. But when we look at the pattern of violence in Churachandpur, over the years, it has been the most persistent and convoluted of all. So insurgency in Manipur cannot be discussed without taking into account the population composition of the border districts of the state, especially Churachandpur, and their strategic geopolitical significance from the point of view of India's national security. Firstly, because of the population composition of this district, and second, because it is a border district. It is located in the southwestern corner of Manipur, and it's a distance of around 120 kilometers from the capital, Imphal. Churachandpur shares its northern and eastern boundaries with 6 different districts of Manipur: Chandel, Thobal, Senapati, Bishnupur, Tamenglong, and Imphal East. And in the west and the south, the district also shares its borders with Assam, Mizoram, and Myanmar. Churachandpur has a hilly terrain, which is surrounded by thick and dense jungles along the unfenced and heavily forested border with Myanmar. And the population of Churachandpur is largely Christian, spread across the Refugee, Chin, and the Mizo communities, with a sizable Christian Meitei and a marginal Tangkhul Naga population. We need to ask here as to why has the Manipur Valley, the Imphal Valley, where a majority of the Hindu Meitei population resides, why has the valley been relatively free from inter-community clashes and internal violence as compared to the hills? Now, if we recall, the rapid spread of Christianity in the hills of Manipur, especially in Churachandpur, because it all began from Churachandpur, it was subsequently followed by bitter community conflicts between different communities. It began with the Bugis and the Nagas in the beginning of the 1990s. And it was in the year 1997, violent clashes broke out between the Zomi community and the Bugi community, resulting in an undocumented number of deaths of people and large-scale internal displacement of the population. And in due course of time, several insurgent outfits claiming to represent specific groups and communities, and sometimes more often than not, multiple organizations also came up claiming to represent the same community. Like at present, there are about 10 different militant outfits claiming to represent only the Bugis. And significantly, almost all of these militant outfits have a viable presence in Churachandpur, including a few valley-based outfits such as the Kangleipak Communist Party, the United National Liberation Front, UNLF. They all have secure bases in Churachandpur. So, in this context, the geography and patterns of population settlement in the district of Churachandpur also have had its own share of contribution in facilitating the militant groups over the years. And apart from a handful of tiny townships like Tikmaimuk and Thanlon and the district headquarters at Churachandpur, the population of Churachandpur is located over several scattered villages separated by hills and rivers and thick bamboo plantations. Uh, and this region offers a strategic location uh, in terms of an easy route to reach Myanmar compared to the other border districts of Manipur. I remember there is a village called Behyang in Churachandpur. Behyang is the same village where, if we remember, an Indian Army colonel, Colonel Biplab Tripathi, along with his wife and minor son, were killed by militants on the 13th of November 2021. The entire road from Churachandpur town to Behyang village falls under the area of influence of the ZRA. ZRA is the Zomi Revolutionary Army, an insurgent organization which has well-established links with drug syndicates in Nagaland, Arunachal Pradesh, and Myanmar. And this village, Behyang, is among the 3 listed drug trafficking routes, more precisely well known for the smuggling of heroin and yaba tablets from the vast state of Myanmar into Manipur for supply into the rest of India and outside. Now, before I end on this, I would like to mention about a very, very shocking incident of rape and molestation of around 25 to 26 women from the Mar community. And this community was the one which had strongly resisted Christian conversions. And there was rape and molestation of their women in the year 2006. And this again happened in Churachandpur. So this incident brought this district to the national limelight in the year 2006. And it was suspected that the Christian militant groups, the UNLF and the KCP, the Kamlepa Communist Party and the United National Liberation Front were behind this ghastly incident.
Apart from it, there's a drug issue. The poppy plantation in the hill region, which is not talked about a lot. So maybe we could throw some light on this drug issue that is happening here. And what is the role that Kuki community plays in it?
Yeah. So yes, as I already mentioned about Churachandpur, how it has been the center of all the drugs and narcotics trade that has been taking place from the entire route from Churachandpur to Behyang village. And whenever we are talking about the Northeast, this is one angle. The drugs and narcotics angle is something which we just cannot leave out, which we cannot ignore. And even when we look behind the ongoing protests, it all started when the government had issued a notification, had issued an order for clearing the reserved and protected forest areas and evicting the illegal settlers there, mainly people from the Kuki community who are engaged in illegal poppy cultivation, opium cultivation. So from this is where it all started. And there is certainly a drug angle in the conflict. The drug angle always comes up in most of the conflicts in the Northeast. And so coming to the ongoing conflict with respect to the drug scenario in the state, just a few months back from now, with the objective of checking the problem of increasing levels of deforestation, the Chief Minister of Manipur and Biren Singh had launched the Green Manipur campaign. And it was under this campaign that, as I mentioned, the reserved and protected forest lands, the hill areas, most of them which are illegally occupied by the Kukis and immigrants from Myanmar, they were identified for immediate eviction so that instead of poppy cultivation, these lands can be used in a more productive manner for the cultivation of yes, so I was talking about the Green Manipur campaign that was launched by the Chief Minister of Manipur just a few months back from now, and it was under this campaign that the protected and the reserved forest areas of Manipur, which are most of which are illegally occupied by the Kukis and immigrants from Myanmar, they were identified for immediate eviction, so that instead of poppy cultivation, these lands can be used productively for the cultivation of fruits and vegetables. Now, this had enormously hurt the multi-crore dollar drug cartels and the drug dealers and so many other invisible lot of people, from lawyers to traders and chartered accountants, etc., who are covertly associated with this immensely lucrative business of drug smuggling that mainly takes place through the hill districts of Manipur to Myanmar and Southeast Asian continent. And we may recall here that the anti-drug campaign that has been going on in full swing in Manipur since February 2021, when Chief Minister Biren Singh had declared a war on the smuggling and trade of drugs, and he also persuaded the common people to take a collective pledge against illegal poppy cultivation in the state, so as to combat the menace of drug addiction among the locals of Manipur, especially the youth, because they are the ones who have been falling prey to drug abuse, making it an issue of public concern. And drug abuse, because it is one of the main reasons behind the increasing rates of HIV/AIDS in the state. So since then till now, the campaign has been exceedingly well received by the common people of Manipur, especially those who have been affected by the illegal occupation of their lands by the immigrants from Myanmar, and who are mainly dependent upon illegal opium cultivation. And so since then till now, the government of Manipur has been undertaking numerous commendable initiatives to prevent cross-border trafficking of narcotics and large-scale opium cultivation in the state.
So overall, the Kuki or the Christian communities in the region have affluence. They have the power to basically ensure how they are represented, that they can claim victimhood despite resorting to violence, despite resorting to arsoning, despite the terrorism that they support. And it speaks for itself that this power they have you know uh, garnered this power by using this drug cartel and basically the support from China and Myanmar, as you spoke. But this is the one side. The other side is that in all this chaos, the the Meitei community does not have a fair representation of its history, of its position today. So I think it would only be fair if we could talk in some detail about the history of the Meitei community.
Regarding the history of the Meiteis, your specific question. So, as I said, we need to look back into the history of Manipur in order to address this question. The ancient name of Manipur, the ancient kingdom of Manipur, was Kanglepa, and it was a neighbor and allied state of the Shan kingdom of Upper Burma called Pong. And it was formed as a result of the amalgamation of several smaller independent principalities. So the ancient kingdom of Manipur, its name was Kanglepa. It was a neighbor and allied state of the Shan kingdom of Upper Burma called Pong. It was formed as a result of the amalgamation of several small independent principalities under the leadership of a king whose name was Nongda Dairen Pakhamba, and who belonged to the Ningthoja clan or Salai. Ningthoja Salai. Salai is the Manipuri word for clan. There is a famous Meitei scholar and author, Pandit N. Chandra Singha, who has written that the word Meitei, which in due course of time came to be used to refer to the people of the Manipur Valley, it was originally used to describe only the people from the Ningthoja clan. And it was after the formation of the confederacy of the Salais and its subjugation by the Ningthojas that the word Meitei or Meitei became the common reference, the common nomenclature for all the people inhabiting the Manipur Valley. In the earlier times, Manipur was known to the outside world by various names such as Meitei Lepak, Poirem, Tak Tak Saronpu, etc. And this region, it formed a very important cultural link between India on the one hand and Southeast Asia on the other. It was referred to as Kathe by the Burmese, Mekhali by the Ahoms, Sanalebak or Kanglebak, or even Maitrabak in a few ancient texts such as Panthoebi, Kongul, Kombi, Luaba, etc., all of which have been written by Meitei scholars. Now, coming to the gradual popularity of Vaishnava Dharma in the valley during the reign of King Pangheba, Kanglepak, which is the ancient name of Manipur, soon came to be known as Manipur. So, Mani in Sanskrit meaning jewel and Pur meaning land. The word mighty has been derived from the root words Mai meaning man and Tai meaning the worshippers of Sanamahi. Sanamahi, who is believed to be the chief creator of the universe. There are several resemblances of Sanamahi with Bhagwan Shiva, and the Mighties have a famous royal chronicle called the Chuitharol Baba, which is an entire lineage of all the dynasties and mighty kings that rule the present day region of Manipur. It also has an extensive description of who is Sanamahi. And as I have mentioned already, the Mighties of the Imphal Valley of Manipur are one among the very few Hindu communities in today's Northeast. They have been able to preserve their own distinct cultural traditions, art, musical and dance forms from appropriation by Christianity. Traditionally speaking, agriculture and weaving were their most important occupations. But I'll come to their religious belief systems and practices. They worship the tulsi plant and they worship Lainingtho Sanamahi. He is also referred to as Sidaba Mapu in the Manipuri language as the chief protector and savior. And they are ancestor worshippers, and in this respect, they share much in common with the Thai Ahom community of Upper Assam. The Puranjis are the historical chronicles of the Ahom dynasty. These texts, the Puranjis, have several references of matrimonial alliances between the Ahoms and the Mighties, which took place in the traditional Hindu way of marriage. Okay, and linguistically, the Mighties are close to the Singhos of Arunachal Pradesh and the Boro community of Assam. Their language, which is also commonly known as Manipuri, but it is known as Meitei or Meiteion. It has been recognized. So the Shakta tradition of Ma Durga is also widely prevalent in Manipur among different sections of the Mighties. There is a theory which claims that Tangja Leela Pakhamba, a king who ruled ancient Manipur in the 14th century from 1445 BC to 1405 BC, is a descendant of the Tang Shang dynasty. And according to some historians, he was from the Tang Shang community, which migrated to the hills of the northeast from Myanmar. But this is again controversial because if Pakhamba was a descendant of the Shang dynasty of Myanmar, his son Tangba wrote in the Meitei language the rules that are to be followed while worshipping Sanamahi. Okay, it was during the 15th century that Gaudiya Vaishnavism of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became immensely popular in Manipur, mainly as a result of the efforts of Raja Bhagyachandra and his daughter Bimbavati. And both Bhagyachandra and his daughter Bimbavati, they visited Navadip and established a temple there dedicated to Govinda or Krishna. And Gaudiya Vaishnavism continues to influence the cultural life of the Mighties even today. And this can be seen through different traditions of Nath Sankirtan, Manohar Sai, and Krishna Ras Leela that is prevalent among the mighty Hindus of Manipur. That's all I have to say.
So whatever we have discussed till now, it reveals that the ongoing clash is a civilizational clash. This is the conclusion. But discussing the details, it also reveals that to what extent we have been kept unaware or disinformed or misinformed about the dynamics that are there in the Northeast region and Manipur in today's context. We do not really know the history, we do not really know the present, and whatever we know is distorted to a large extent. There's a role of the Marxist historians, the Marxist campaigns that uh, you know has resulted in this situation today. I think we could discuss this role in detail. Media, the intellectual circles, the leftist cabal. What is their role in ensuring that the true picture of events is never revealed to the population at large in this nation? So over to you.
Yes, true. As you have already mentioned about the Marxist historians, I know what we mean actually, how they have always tried to interpret this region. So I wouldn't say that people do not know about the Northeast. They do know about it, but yes, there has been a lot of misrepresentation and misinformation about this part of the country. So there is a certain section which claims that Acha, Sri Ram was born in Ayodhya. So people of the Northeast, they do not know about it. But it is not like that. So there has been a lot of misinformation surrounding this region of the country. One of the reasons behind this, I would say, has been the continuous neglect of the region by the successive governments. And by successive governments, here I mean all governments that have been in power since independence towards the development of this region. And it has led to two major consequences. Firstly, the uprise of popular discontent amongst the local population, which eventually resulted in armed insurgent movements instigated by many non-state actors, and which created an image of a volatile Northeast uh, uh, in the popular imagination of people in the rest of the country. And secondly, a tacit support by the central government for the conversion activities by missionaries after independence. So it led to a situation where large scale Christian conversions had completely inversed the religious demography across the region. So drugs, guns, and missionaries have been afflicting this region since the period post 1947, and a region which was largely peaceful, where there was continuous resistance against the cultural colonization caused by the Islamic invaders, and later during the British period uh, against British imperialism. Eventually, it was made to fall to the designs of the evangelical designs of the Christian missionaries, and the end result has been the disappearance of their native cultures, their traditional cultures from many of the states of the region, especially Nagaland, Mizoram, and Meghalaya, and the appearance of a society which sees the Indian state as its arch enemy, and which is inspired by an alien culture that the conversion machinery has imposed. Uh, there has also been a projection of the region in the Marxist academia as an assembly of oppressed nations by the Indian state. So, armed rebellions and the way the Indian state has dealt with the situation, it has been decried as oppression of tribal communities and tribal cultures by the news media and, of course, by the Marxist intelligentsia. So it resulted in large-scale interference by outside forces in the affairs of this region by providing huge amount of scholarships through well-funded NGOs and universities, which has helped to create a narrative of oppression by the intellectual sepoys from the Western academia. And the cultural genocide of these societies in the Northeast, and the overwhelming influence of a foreign religion and the Western culture has changed the sense of identity among the population of many of these states. The youth which goes out of these societies, they project an image of a highly westernized society amongst the host society. So it has resulted in the construction of a negative stereotype of this region, leading to further alienation of the people from this region, from the rest of Bharat, feeding into the narrative of of all these separatist ideologies, and the breakage of the cultural link of this region from the rest of India has given strength further the Marxist narrative, which touts this region as a separate entity, as an entirely separate entity from the Union of India.
Entire conflict, uh, the tribes which are protesting against the recognition of the, ST status of the Hindu community, they've been calling themselves indigenous, which basically means you know, the actual local people belonging to the land. And this term has been actually popularized in the media also, which has led to this portrayal where the cookies have been, turned into this indigenous actual people belonging to the land. That is, these are the actual inhabitants of Manipur, and the Hindu community is made to look as if it is somehow the migrants or the refugees. The tables have been turned like this. So while people who are acquainted to the region and who are aware, for the layman, it is very much possible they might get confused, because the tribals, the ST status as such, when it comes to the Indian context, it does not have to do anything with being indigenous. Otherwise, everyone here, the Hindus at large, are indigenous people of this land. So now when the Hindus, because this recognition is basically based on consideration of all the factors that the court or the state looks at while providing the status. So basically the state has confirmed that the Meitei community is eligible for the scheduled tribe status. What would be the other aspects in the protection of the, larger cultural, civilizational, rights? Is there any role that this recognition would play for the Hindus of the region?
Coming to the indigenous versus non-indigenous debate, it plays out in a very, what I would say, there is a common pattern in all the states, especially the Christian dominant states. We see how this debate between the indigenous versus the non-indigenous plays out. So the Christians will say, okay, they are the indigenous ones. Then the Hindus, I mean, those who are non-Christians, those who have not converted. I will give you the example of Meghalaya in this context. So while I was walking on the ground, so this community of the Niam Khasis. So Niam Khasis are, those Khasis who have still not converted into Christianity. They still follow their ancestral religious belief system, and they uh, they have problems with Christianity. But then at the same time, they do not. They call themselves indigenous. Okay, they say that we are not Hindus. Okay, because of course there is no benefit of being a Hindu constitution. So हम indigenous है, हम Hindu नहीं है. So they would say like that, so everywhere in Manipur also, when I was talking about the Meitei, the Hindus, there is a certain section among the Meitei Hindu population as well, which calls itself as indigenous, some indigenous. Okay, and so we have nothing to do with dharma. We have nothing to do with Hindu dharma. Yes, we are not Christians. We have problems with Christianity as well. But then at the same time, we are not. We don't share any similarity of religious rituals and belief systems with Hindu dharma. And this conflict between the Hindu Meiteis of the Imphal Valley and the Christian Nagas and Cookies of the hills is not something new. Because as I mentioned in the very beginning of my talk, the state of Manipur is surrounded by high hills and mountains on all the four sides, and there is a fertile, agriculturally fertile, low-lying river valley at the center that comprises just hardly around 8 to 10% of the total geographical land area of the state. But this is where almost 60% of the population of the state resides. But the hills, on the other hand, they constitute almost 90% of the geographical area of the state, but barely 40% of the state's population resides here. And the Imphal Valley is home to almost all the Meiteis in the state and some scattered Vanavasi population groups, as well in a significant percentage of Bengali Hindus. Now, it is mainly the valley where the political power center lies. Okay, so Manipur has had only one tribal chief minister till now, Yangmasu Shaiza, in the 1970s, and the rest of the chief ministers have always been from the valley. But we often get to hear the argument that the valley sends more number of MLAs to the assembly, so the Meiteis do not deserve ST status, but that is quite justifiable because it has more population. Uh, uh, I mean, the valley has more population. So naturally, if the hill communities start settling in the valley in large numbers, besides the immigration, the infiltration from Myanmar and Bangladesh that has been happening, the feeling of becoming an alien, a foreigner in one's own land, it is very much likely to increase among the valley inhabitants, that is the Meiteis, in terms of their access, ownership, and control over resources. So the same trend that has been going on in states like Assam and Tripura as well, because of the influx of Bangladeshi Muslim infiltrators. And earlier also in Manipur, prior to this, this trend became very much visible in the violent social movements, both for and against the introduction of the inner line permit system, ILP. So the deep-rooted insecurities of the Meitei Hindus forced them to agitate in support of the introduction of the ILP system. And the leaders of the movement claimed that unabated migration from Myanmar and Bangladesh had resulted in stress on their scarce land and resources, and therefore they wanted constitutional protection for the locals. Uh, so all these factors, besides the disparity of rights with respect to land and resources between the Hindus of the valley and the Christian population in the hills, have led to this clamor for the recognition of the Meiteis as a scheduled tribe. They are losing out to the Muslims and the Christians on every front in almost every decade. Now, according to the Christians, the Meiteis do not deserve ST status. Why? Because they are currently listed under the categories of scheduled castes and OBC, other backward classes. So the Christian groups are raising the allegation that if the Meiteis become STs, they will grab all the jobs reserved for the scheduled tribes, because overall the educational qualifications of the Meiteis are way better than the Nagas and the Kukis. But from the perspective of the Meiteis, it's not like that. They are not demanding ST status to grab reserve jobs. Instead, they say that without the ST status, they are on the verge of becoming extinct in their own ancestral lands. So for them, it is more about saving their lands, culture, and civilization, which are under constant attack from illegal immigrants from Myanmar, uh, and and other places, and their grievances are to a large extent true. Because when we look at the changing population profile of different areas of Manipur, there has been an abnormal increase of the population, which thinks of something else going on. And so it cannot alone be attributed to an increase in the natural birth rate. So there is a valid reason as to why the government of Manipur ordered the eviction of forest lands recently, which led to the beginning of the disturbing incidents that we are witnessing now. And of course, the problem every time in the Northeast, it assumes complex dimensions because of the fight over who are the indigenous people. So in Manipur also it's happening now, the Meiteis or the Kukis. So who are indigenous?